am live. I am continuing with the awakening letters. These are varieties of spiritual experiences in the life after death. These are Lady Sandys, Cynthia's Lady Sandys, and Rosamond Lehman, who both lost their daughters very early under tragic circumstances, and both died young. And these letters are transmitted by Sally and Patricia, who are the daughters. It comes through the pen of Cynthia, Lady Sandys, and her and Rosamond did this work over 30 years. This was published in 1979, and I am now in part 5. And these are letters from Joe, who is Sir Alvary Gascoigne, and he is Cynthia's brother in the afterlife. These letters are from my brother, Joe, who served with the Inniskillen Dragoons in India before the First World War. He returned with his regiment to France in December 1914 and exchanged into the Goldstream Guards, with whom he served until the end of the war. He then took the examination for the diplomatic service and served for the next 40-odd years all over the world, including a long period in the Far East. He adored wild places and had the true traveller's passion for challenging adventures and hairbreadth escapes. On leaving Peking, he walked alone from Canton back through Yemen into Burma, following notes made by Colonel Pereira on his first journey. Joe would have loved to make more journeys, also to do some serious climbing, but the stringencies of his career made this impossible. This is written by Cynthia. Joe's description of his own death. I had a good night of refreshing sleep on my last night on earth, and when you both came to see me, I was in a state bordering upon pleasant relaxation. Every part of me seemed to be switching off gently, and when the last switch was pressed, I suddenly found I was floating above my body. I made instinctively for the window. Mother was there, but I couldn't see her. She said my first words were, "Thank God that's over. I never thought I should have lived through it." Whereupon she burst out laughing, and that was the first etheric sound I heard. I looked around and saw only you and Lorna. Obviously, that laughter did not come from you, but in a few moments I could feel her arms around me and recognized her voice. Nothing in life comes up to the immense joy of dying. Death has been made such a bogey that it is only through suffering and great discomfort that we are persuaded to let go and cooperate with death. The body fights to retain life on any terms. It is the inborn instinct of the body-brain, so we have to re-educate this body-brain to the point when it will accept and relinquish its power without waiting for the spirit to be wrenched away through pain and disease. You will find that more and more people just die in their tracks, which is the ideal way of leaving. I told you that I had experienced a strange feeling of power that seemed to be drawing me out of my body during the last few days of my illness. I was hopelessly ill, and I knew it, so I welcomed this inrush of new life and let go very willingly. That was why I did not linger. You must realize that when you have joined the club, the passing cannot be very long delayed, and be ready to receive the power that draws you quietly, painlessly out of your body. It's the most beautiful and glorious thing. I see so many are prolonging their life quite unnecessarily. If you give up the reins, as it were, to the great Creator, expressing your readiness, then life is withdrawn gently and lovingly, and the dossier of your earthly effort is closed. We are not meant to suffer death. I am told that Christ, by his suffering upon the cross, removed the need for pain in passing through death. We now say, relax and let life do with you what it will. Life commands you agree and cooperate. This is tremendous. This is another letter. I feel slightly drunk and not quite steady on my feet, but extremely happy and full of a sense of well-being. I don't feel I should, but I do. I was taken to Scartha. I said. I said, let's go round to the back of the island to look over towards Mo. I became overpowered by the wonderful scents and sounds and the whole glistening beauty of it all. So I just sat down in the heather and tried to think back and remember how I'd got there and why I loved it so much. Mother and Douglas and Pat all share this feeling. They brought me here to give me strength. It is the most wonderful tonic. No shot in the arm could be more effective. I stood up, feeling as I used to, long ago, when we tore over the island to the pigeon coves at dawn. In fact, I found we had drifted over those very caves on the far side of the island overlooking Corticrecan. How magnificent it all looked. Then I remembered my life in phases as I grew up. The war, marriage, the children, the exam for the diplomatic service. My posts wandered slowly through my mind like a cinema. I went on working at one after another of our posts abroad, Paris, China, Hungary, Morocco, Hungary again after the war, Japan and Moscow, and on to the film came the sparkling figures of Lorna's dogs. Everywhere they came, but I couldn't separate them, until one poodle attached herself to me, and I remembered Maruka. I must have called out, Maruka, and suddenly she was beside me, rubbing herself against me, and showing great pleasure, as she always did. How glad I was to see her. I caught hold of her and hugged her. She was so real and so much a part of my old life. I can't write much, and what I want to say must not be too complicated, so I'm going to let Mother do it for me. Joe asked about his funeral, and his mother explained. Joe was anxious to know what had happened since he left hospital. I told him about the cremation and that the ashes were scattered in Captain's Wood. He seemed to like that. Then I told him you'd had a memorial service at Alberfort. He groaned and said, I suppose that was inevitable. Then I asked, you have a chance to be present at the last rite, if you care to. The last rite? He exclaimed, but surely it's all over now. I told him there was still another tribute into which Douglas was to be drawn in the guards' chapel. He looked very puzzled and said, the guards' chapel? That was blown up in the war. And rebuilt, I added. He seemed to think this over for some time and then said, is this really true? Then I suppose I ought to attend. And then laughed and added, I don't suppose it will matter to anyone if I'm there or not, will it? I said, yes, it will. It may be the first link in communication between you and Lorna. Great power is generated on several planes at these events, at these services, and you have no idea how well they can be used. Anyhow, if you would like to come, we shall all be there with you, and Douglas has a special mention in the service, so he will be taking part, and you can learn to officiate. That made him laugh again. Officiate? How extraordinary. What do you mean? I mean that when you are in the etheric body and you attend one of these services, you are the natural link between the congregation, those in the physical body and divinity. This shook him, and he said, "But I couldn't do that." Douglas might, but I can't. I've never been a serious Christian or believed in churches. I replied, "Churches do hold etheric power as well as some spiritual power, and both of these lines of force are now in your territory." He said, "Don't make things too complicated for me, or I'll lose my balance. Just tell me simply what I have to do." So I explained where he was to be and how he would stand between me and Douglas, with Pat forming the triangle. 3 is always important. I told him how he would be surrounded by our power, that he would see you all quite clearly and be able to pass quite close to Lorna, touching her aura. That is important. Then passing on into the sanctuary to stand near the altar, and that we might be slightly above the actual ground, making him feel rather tall. The next day. This has been the most exciting re-entry into the world of matter for Joe. The chapel was packed with Joe's old friends from the wars, the diplomatic service, and the old household. Here is the summary of what he said about it afterwards. "I had no idea what a service could mean. I am absolutely staggered and amazed. I floated in with you and Pat, not really expecting anything and feeling rather weak. Then, as we advanced into the church, something happened to me. I was led irresistibly to the altar, and we stood there facing the beams of golden light which seemed to come from all the congregation. And on turning towards the altar, I saw a marvelous flow of soft blue light which seemed to cover and calm me. The gold was exciting and made me feel almost back in the world, but the blue light made me think again. Where the devil am I, and what new worlds are opening before me? There was something in the music that seemed to be giving me an extra sense of seeing. I could see much more clearly when the choir were singing, especially at one moment when you all stood out individually right through the church. I could see everyone, not as one does in a crowd, but separately. So I finish this here because there are more letters from Joe. Today is Thursday, the 30th of April.